Morning Nigeria. Today we focus on 2023 pre-election matter.
Well, at the close of Monday, the 9th of May 2022, close to 25 individuals have come forward to openly express their intentions to contest the 2023 presidential elections. As you're aware, now the fee is, of course, running to hundreds of millions of naira, Kingsley.
No question about that, Kirian. Of course, the primary focus has been on the presidential election, but we do know that there are quite a number of other offices and candidates or aspirants, as they are at the moment, are jostling for those positions. And those positions include National Assembly seats, that's to say the Senate House of Representatives, governorship, and of course, House of Assemblies in the respective states. For the presidential election, as you noted, Kirian, the numbers of the candidate or the aspirants, I keep saying candidates, of the aspirants seeking to become candidates, those numbers are simply, by our previous experience, staggering on this occasion.
Very staggering. Never in the history of this country that we have that volume, of persons who want to, become the number one citizen of this country. Well, as some persons who have described the season, the aspirants have continued to pour in like rain in August.
No question. And we are in May.
Exactly. And Nigerians are beginning to witness the jostling for the number one position in the land on a very, massive scale. And of course, some political heavyweights, in major parties in the country are contenders.
No question about that. Now, some have come out to fully express their interest by paying for the expression of interest and nomination forms. But what has been somewhat amusing on the scene now is what we're also witnessing, namely groups of supporters claiming that they have purchased forms on behalf of a number of aspirants of their choice. And you remember, Kieran, yesterday while we were on Good Morning Nigeria, and you said that you and I do not have the kind of money to throw our heart into the ring. And I cracked the joke that, I had my supporters at the gate
who were
waiting, but they had to disperse yesterday. We are expecting them again this morning with their forms.
Yes, indeed. It's I'm not going to say surprising, because this is a situation where everybody wants to, be number one in Nigeria. But of course, what Nigerians are always asking for is, do you have the capacity? Do you have the ability, to run a complex nation such as Nigeria? Well, it has become a case of support your own, and the more the merrier, according to one of the contenders. He said the more the merrier. And of course, as more cash rakes in for the two political parties, of course, the parties become richer, and almost every aspirant is also seeking for the blessing of the current president, right? Everybody wants to become the standard bearer, especially for the governing party, the APC.
That's right, Kiria. There's no question about that. We haven't seen political parties use occasions like this as very viable, what Nigerians refer to as IGR, as internally generated revenue. But talking about the rules governing the election, we do know that there have been issues around Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act 2022. The Act, of course, makes it mandatory for some categories of political office holders to first resign from office before vying for any elective position. There are contentious matters over that. There's also the morality question versus the provision of the legislation and the constitutional requirements.
Indeed, there are many more matters arising, and even as the tweaking of matters pour out in different conversations over this electoral law provisions and what it portends for the democratic process as we look further in our concept of leadership in march towards 2023. And again, well, the matter is in court at the moment, as to the section you mentioned earlier. But some are saying that in the Constitution, it's only 1 month, that is, stipulated as at a time where appointees should resign, if you are seeking for any elective position. But this time around, of course, there seems to be a conflict, between that and the provision of the new electoral law, which has been signed into law.
Well, that's, as you said, there have been debates around that provision. That's Section 84, subsection 12. And we'll see what the judicial pronouncements would be in terms of declarative orders that the courts may pass on that occasion. There are quite some issues, and however it is resolved, of course, that would then become the new template going forward in terms of what public servants or other appointees of government should do before seeking to contest the primaries of their political parties.
Well, to which category of political appointees as public officers are being mentioned in the Constitution? Where should the contentious clause be hinged to address all concerns raised? Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I am Kirian Umaye.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to this edition of the program. As always, we are live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Well, of course, as usual, in addition to our main conversation, which is on the pre-election matters, we shall also have our complementary segments. These include newspaper review and business. Right now, here is Dennis Adegunloye, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kieran. And Mr. Kingsley, I saw a group outside. I'm not sure if it's attached to you, given this topic that we're going to be discussing, unprecedented levels of presidential aspirants.
They are gathering again this morning. In fact, we have already mobilized the Federal Road Safety Corps and the VIO to control the traffic.
Wow.
Because I expect a mass of supporters outside there.
And they're into fundraising for you.
Not just fundraising, they are bringing they are bringing the funds for at least 2 or 3 political parties.
Interesting.
Dennis.
We look forward to the discussions with our guests.
That's right.
Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. Governor David Umahi of Ebonyi State has expressed formal appreciation to President Muhammadu Buhari for approving federal government's takeover of King David University of Medical Sciences, Uburu, constructed by his administration. The governor was on a thank you visit to the Nigerian leader, who himself was on a 2-day visit to the southeastern state.
It was an endorsement of total acceptance of Mr. President in Southeast, and most immensely and with all gratitude to God and deep appreciation to Mr. President, thank him for the takeover of that medical university. The truth is that it's beyond what a state government can manage. And the truth is that it has become the center of excellence.
As the race for political party presidential tickets continues, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has met with delegates of the All Progressive Congress in Bauchi. At the National Assembly, the Senate has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2022, which seeks to correct the omission of statutory delegates in Section 84 by deleting the existing subsection 8 and inserting a new subsection 8. The Senate, before the third reading, suspended its rules and considered the bill for both first and second reading at Tuesday's plenary.
Such an unintended clause has to be amended before the party primary starts in the next 8 days. And therefore, this is an emergency legislation, so to speak.
As the June 3rd deadline for the submission of party candidates approaches, the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, is appealing to INEC for 2 months extension for the conduct of party primaries. Chairman of IPAC, Yabagi Sani, made the appeal at a consultative meeting with INEC in Abuja. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, however, says the hands of the Commission are tied by the new Electoral Act, so June 3rd for the submission of candidates remains sacrosanct.
I hereby reiterate the position of the Commission that there will be no review of the timelines. There are so many interrelated activities that are associated with the timelines which must be carried out. Any review to extend the timelines for one activity will affect other activities and put unnecessary pressure on the political parties and the Commission.
For Africa to fully invest in developing human capital, the continent's debt burden needs to be lifted off her shoulders. This was the focus of discussions at the Conference of Speakers and Heads of Parliaments in Abuja.
We have confronted the unfortunate reality that Africa's debt burden, both the fact of the debt and the conditions of servicing, represent a significant inhibitor to progress and full prosperity on the continent.
State governments have been urged to develop initiatives within the Nigeria Road Safety Strategy 2 to address challenges of effective road management in the country. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, emphasized this at the opening of the FRSE Capacity Building Workshop on the implementation of the Nigeria Road Safety Strategy 2 Phase 3.
In sustaining road safety intervention in our country through implementation of planning, coordination, execution, design regulation, awareness creation, research and training.
The sit-at-home order imposed by the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra on the people of the Southeast has continued with consequences on all sectors of the economy as candidates for the 2022-2023 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination have been equally affected.
Sit at home yesterday. I have to trek from Transeku to where I'm writing the exam. And after every we still did not write the exam in that morning. The sit at home is here affecting us here.
That's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues after this break with Kingsley and Kieran. Have a great day.
I'm the Chief Resident Engineer and Project Supervisor of the Second Niger Bridge Project. The Second Niger Bridge Project is a project that has been conceived for a very long time, but it has finally come to life during this present administration. This project has a lot of socio-economic benefits, and it has impacted positively on the lives of the host communities, both in Anambra State and Delta State. The people are very happy. The host communities, they partnered with us because apart from the social benefits, indigenes are also employed on this project. We can see how their lives are being improved.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
I find the strength I need every time that I look into your eyes. I know they worry, cause I know that you did by my side. And if I fall away, right in the midst of all my hours, you know that I am on my one. It always takes for me. No matter.
Stop the proliferation of illicit small arms and light weapons. It is estimated there are over 6 million illicit arms in circulation in Nigeria, and this has led to the untimely death of innocent citizens. This huge number and overflow of weapons in the country have needlessly contributed to very high levels of violent crimes, banditry, insurgency, terrorism, cultism, and political thuggery, thereby making you insecure. We must work together to rid Nigeria of illicit small arms and light weapons. Stop gun running, stop stockpiling, stop selling your security and well-being for cheap. Report anyone stockpiling or smuggling illicit arms to the nearest security agency.
Candidates who are interested in gaining admission into NTA Television College JOS for the 2021-2022 two-year National Innovation Diploma Program are to apply for admission through the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board JAM. The courses available for application include film and television production, broadcast journalism, and television engineering technology. Such candidates must have a minimum of 5 O-level credits in relevant subjects including English language and mathematics. For more information, please contact NTA Television College, JOS, or the marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. Registrar, Announcer. As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within, and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Well, thank you for being there for us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. And next on the program is business news. And let's join Comfort Amodu for details.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service has requested all components that enjoyed capital allowances on qualifying capital expenditure of 500,000 naira and above between 2016 and 2021 years of assessment to submit the certificates of acceptance issued by the Industrial Inspectorate Division of the Federal Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment to the tax office where the respective tax file is domiciled. This is contained in a statement signed by Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service Mohammed Nami. According to the statement, the development will affect components that enjoyed capital allowances of 500,000 naira and above between 2016 and 2021 years of assessment by October 31st. In addition, the service highlighted that the allowance may be withdrawn for those who fail to comply. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, is seeking for harmonization of port state control to improve maritime safety growth. The Director General NIMASA, Dr. Bashir Yusuf Jamo, said these will ensure effective port state control systems for the efficient running of member states' maritime administrations. With Business News, Comfort Amodu.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package and Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us is Newspaper Review.
And now we have Bayo Toyebi, our reviewer. Very good to have you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good
Right,
morning.
Bayo, good morning.
Good morning,
Yeah.
Nigeria.
Kieran? We'll kick off.
All right, let's start with the Pilot newspaper. The Pilot newspaper. Senate amends Electoral Act to allow statutory delegates to vote. That's on page 8. ASU strike. Senate Vision Africa's intervention halt NAN's protest. Now the lead story on the Pilot newspaper. Fuel scarcity, no end in sight. Ipman laments, that's the kickers to that headline. Ipman laments, asks Nigerians to prepare for what's petroleum scarcity. Says federal government owes its members whooping 500 billion naira as bridging claims. Urges NNPC to convert special allocation for cargo to Ipman to quickly address the issue. Fuel queues due to low load out at depots. NNPC insists it has 2.5 billion liters in stock. For the photo story shows the the queues at the filling stations, looking so riotous. Well, below that, we have INEC rejects political parties' request to extend deadline for primaries. It's on page 5. And now also below that, we have other stories. We have over 700,000 out-of-school children in Niger State, says the superb chairman. Buhari sympathizes with Zenith Bank's CMD's mother's death. Okay, now we have 2023. Our position on Southern presidency still stands, says Sanwo-Olu. That's on page 6. Arraignment of Stella Odua over alleged 7.9 billion naira flops. It's on page 5. FCTA to recover 29 billion naira ground rent from land allottees. Reps secure 6 million liters of aviation fuel for airlines. That's on page 4. All right, Kinsley.
Okay, we also take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper, above the name flag, why refineries are moribund by NNPC. There's a writer to that headline, TAM, poorly done. TAM stands for turnaround maintenance. Electoral Act, amendment widens primaries participants. Navy arrests 117 suspected oil thieves and 6 vessels. 6 killed, 42 injured in Damaturu rainstorm. And below the nameplate, more protests over ASU strike. Otom to Mieti Allah, we will meet in court. Uncertainty in APC over Jonathan Emefiele and additional. With 4 riders to that headline, Adamu declines ex-president's proposal. CBN governor in dilemma. AFDB, that's African Development President Mom, submission of forms closes. I think that there has been an extension of that for the submission of forms by the APC. There is also a story to that effect. Now, the aspirants who have obtained their forms for the APC, those aspirants are there in the sidebar on that front page. And the controversial forms obtained for former President Goodluck Jonathan, Emefiele, and as well as Akinwumi additional. So you have those details there in the sidebar on the front page. INEC rejects parties' requests for adjustment of polls timetable. Primaries dates sacrosanct. That's the rider. And dollar scarcity pushes more transactions to parallel market. And right at the foot of the front page, Niger records 34,000 invalid voter registration. 60 million naira for families of slain officers. Bayo.
Well, let's start with the development at the legislature. The Senate yesterday amended the Electoral Act 2022. The amendment of the Act was passed to law. The amendment of the Act was for the law that passed and signed into law recently. This time, the initiative was to ensure that members of the executive arm of government, political parties, are able to participate in meetings, congresses, and conventions as statutory delegates. Without the amendment, elected officers in the executive arm of government, the legislature, at national, state, and local government, as well as executives of political parties, will be disenfranchised. And so, accordingly, the Senate amended Section 84(8) at first, second, and third readings simultaneously and passed the bill. The bill was sponsored by Deputy President of the Senate, and the intention is to correct the unintended error in the Electoral Act 2022. The House of Representatives is expected to hold an emergency plenary session today and to also expeditiously pass the amendment. It may be recalled that the House of Reps had adjourned perennially until May 24th, but the clerk has summoned members of the House of Representatives to an emergency plenary session today to effect the amendment. A Federal High Court in Lagos has nullified the access tracing record and management regulation of 2019 as invalid. Accordingly, all sales and disposal of assets made under the regulation has been nullified. The court held that the regulation were ultra vires the office of the powers of the Attorney General of the Federation. The court, in its wisdom, said the 2019 regulation conflicted with the EFCC Act as well as the NDLEA Act of 2004 and the ICPC Act 2000. The grounds upon which the executive order was passed was predicated on Section 315 of the Constitution, and the court held that the section of that section was limited to enactments that are predating the 1999 Constitution, and therefore all the enactments in question, the three enactments, that of NDLEA, ICPC, and EFCC, were all after the 1999 Constitution, and therefore the court in its wisdom nullified that. The National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, has issued a 9-day ultimatum to the federal government and ASU to open up all public universities. ASU on Monday extended its 3 months, this warning strike by another 3 months. Daily Trust reports that the coordinator of the National Association of Nigerian Students Zone F, Moses Onya, says that with the expiration of the ultimatum by 25th of May, students of Southeast extraction will block the Niger Bridge and 3 airports at Enugu, Owerri, and Umeri. With the extension of the ASU strike, the students are complaining that they are tired of staying at home and they can't continue to be unproductive.
But Bayo, sorry, let's talk about this ASU strike. I just read somewhere that they're resuming, talks. There will be fresh negotiations, between the federal government and ASU.
Yes, the Minister of Labour and Employment announced that he is expecting a meeting, but the Academic Staff Union of Nigeria University says that they are having a meeting on 16th of May next week, and they are not aware of the meeting that the minister talked about anytime this week. So that is the status of that meeting. But be that as it may, at the Senate, the president of the National Association of Nigerian Students was accompanied by a clergy of the Methodists, and they approached the Senate president, and the Senate president assured that they are going to intervene once more by inviting the members of the Academic Staff Union of Nigerian Universities, as well as the parties on the part of government. The Senate president expressed concern that they had intervened before, but things did not work out. But this time, they are going to put their feet down and ensure that a resolution is found for the student to go back to school. And he therefore appealed to the students to hold their fire and give them ample room to see what they can do about negotiations. But there has been also another development. The Joint Action Committee
what was the basis for now declaring an all-out strike for 3 months? They had a warning strike, first for 4 weeks, extended it by 8 weeks. Now they say this is a full-blown strike for 3 months. What is the rationale for the 3 months?
Well,
no, I'm asking a rhetorical question.
Yes.
I don't quite understand it.
After warning strike, usually if your demand is not met, you take the real action in terms of the proper strike itself. The warning strike is to say, look, we are going to do this if this is not done. It's as simple as that. So that's the rationale behind
I understand that in industrial relations. What I'm just asking is, what is the basis for the time delimitation? If you say 3 months, if it's an open-ended strike, that is to say a strike until further notice.
Well,
because are they saying that within 3 months they will resolve all these issues when we are in the political season? The point I'm driving at is it just a question of counting the numbers of weeks that you go on strike, or actually getting the issue resolved? That was a significant point made by the Senate president yesterday, that the 2009 agreement, in terms of the financials, that agreement will now appear to be unrealistic. So, how do you fund public universities? That is the critical question.
Exactly.
And aside from whether it is IPPS or UTAS or whatever, how do you fund? What is ASU's own recommendation for the funding of public universities? State universities, they charge fees, don't they? So why is everyone, including ASU, running away from the reality now that the government cannot sustain the current funding arrangements for public universities?
If the government cannot fund, if they cannot fund universities, why not hand these universities over to states or organizations, or even the missionary, as the case may be? Because in other climes, the universities are run. If in other climes that the universities are run by government, we will have to find a template that are deployed to be able to run universities. And the point you made that is very important is that aspect of payment. I think why people go to public universities is because the payment is lower than what we get in the private universities. That's number one. But if it has become difficult for government to do the funding aspect of running a university, something has to be done. And if there was an agreement, for me, if there was an agreement in 2009, as the case may be, let's get to maybe 80% of that agreement on the part of government. Give them some money. Public universities really are. It's a disastrous situation, to be honest with you. If you go to some hostels, some universities, they're not inhabitable. In fact, the environment is dirty. In fact, it's an opposite of what we have in the private universities.
That's true. That's true. Let's face it. Look, we are not going to insist on a return to the benefits or the advantages that we enjoyed when we were students.
Yes.
Let's be realistic, because the cost of running universities has gone up right now, yes. And then the number of universities, the number of students has also exploded. I will try to figure out today how many were in our class. But that class today cannot contain the students who are on stream for admission. The same way you have pressure on the hostels. I made this point some weeks ago, if you recall, Kieran, that let us assume there are 1 million students in federal universities, and you charge them a tuition of 100,000 naira. Calculate, that will give you 100 billion naira per annum. 100,000. You are telling me that a student cannot pay 100,000, or even if it is 200,000? It is not that the government is saying that it cannot fund universities, that it cannot fully fund universities, and people have to pay. You have to pay for it. I mean, if there is a proper template for sorting all of this out, so that some of these issues that we are talking about, whether end allowance or the others, can't come from such sources.
And universities are also asking for autonomy. If you can give them full autonomy, to some extent, they put the charge in question and perhaps be able to run the university.
The autonomy, is it related to the UTAS, University Tertiary Accounting System, which they are demanding? As at yesterday, the Joint Action Committee of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Nigeria Universities, as well as the Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, also came out with their own template. They want a payment platform that they call University Peculiar Payroll Payment System. They don't want to be part of IPIS. So, ASU wants UTAS, NASU and SANU wants U3PS. We don't know
let them also come up with a template for the funding of universities.
Yeah.
Professor Peter Okebokola, former NUC Executive Secretary and former Vice Chancellor of Lagos State University, has done a lot of work on this area, along, of course, with the colleagues on the African continent, on how to sustainably fund university education. Well, sometimes when we are giving examples, we forget university education is not cheap in most advanced countries. Go to the US, for instance, you have students take loans. they take loans to pay their way through college, what we call universities.
Yeah.
And when they start working, they start repaying those loans.
Exactly. That's a planned out society. I mean, I'm sure many Nigerian youth will also like to, take loans and they fund their education. But it's what that the system is not, positioned to tackle that kind of social responsibility.
Yeah, but before we let you go away, and we have to do that immediately, I've just been a bit curious about the groups that have been obtaining funds for those they believe should be candidates in the 2023 presidential election. The
Aspirants.
no, who should be candidates in the 2023 election?
Okay.
The Amajiri, I hear they have an association, and I'm wondering why would Amajiri, which is an anachronistic system, have an association and then be purporting to be obtaining the form for an aspirant. And if you recall, sometime last year or the year before, a number of state governments in the northern part of the country took measures to ensure that their Amajiris were pulled off the streets. Because the system doesn't encourage their education. The system is an abuse of the rights of those children. And now I hear that you have an association.
You see, these are just politicians, political association. How could I imagine have an association?
At the last count, one political party already has 25 political aspirants in one party. Another has 14.
All right, Bayo, let's just call it a day here. We hope to have you again back tomorrow for further analysis on newspaper review. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of NTO. Thank you for staying with us. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we shall be focusing our attention on the major topic for conversation today.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively with Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC.
We have unveiled the 622 as a toll-free line through which consumers can be able to lodge their complaints. And we have introduced the 112 as a national emergency number.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message from the National Orientation Agency.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA Television College Jos invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs: Protocol Event Management and Public Relations, date 2nd May to 13th May 2022, 2 weeks. Video Camera Maintenance, date 16th May to 27th May 2022, 2 weeks. Basic Television Production Techniques, date 16th May to 10th June 2022, 4 weeks. Photojournalism and Photography, date 6th June to 1st July 2022, 4 weeks. Intermediate online news reporting skills. Date 4th July to 29th July 2022, 4 weeks. Sports coverage and reporting skills in the mass media. Date 4th July to 15th July 2022, 2 weeks. The course fee for 2 weeks courses is 150,000 naira per participant, while the fee for 4 weeks courses is 180,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA Television College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-079-5335 or 0806-980-9807. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
You're welcome back. Our topic today is on 2023 pre-election matters. And as a prompt for our conversation, here is Oyemi Ajayi with a report.
The clock ticks and the time fast approaching. The target, the 2023 general election. Electoral stakeholders already getting set for the D-Day and not without different drama, with numerous persons indicating interest to the purchase of the forms. Many have continued to react, especially with a huge amount of buying forms for each positions of interest. With about 24 aspirants already paid and picked their presidential forms in the All Progressives Congress APC, and about 15 at the main opposition People's Democratic Party PDP. However, of concern are some political office holders who have showed interest and bought forms to contest the forthcoming elections. Many have claimed that the electoral law should be respected, as such persons should resign as stipulated in the law. Another issue that has raised the public dust is the perceived interest by the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, in the presidential race, as this was widely condemned by many who question his non-partisanship by the virtue of his position. This has also cast doubt on the partnership between the electoral umpire, which is the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), and the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is that for the latter to be in custody of the electoral materials. As the primaries of each political parties are fast approaching, INEC has rejected an appeal by the 18 registered political parties through the Inter-Party Advisory Council (IPAC) for an extension of the deadline for the conduct of party primaries. Now, how prepared indeed are the political actors towards the forthcoming elections? Also, with the charade of form purchase, how much expectation should the people have from the political actors? Well, these are some questions guests will be answering on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
With us in the studios to discuss issues around the pre-election matters of the 2023 general elections, we have regular guests. Yunus Ustaz Usman, learned senior advocate of Nigeria. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Also here with us, Associate Professor Sharif Gali Ibrahim, the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja. Sharif, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We have Festus Oguche. Festus Oguche is a constitutional lawyer, and he's joining us from our Port Harcourt studios. Good morning and welcome.
Yes, good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Here we have Uluwele Osazeuzi, former director, voter education and publicity, INEC. It's also a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning.
All right. And we are also hoping to have the National Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, and National Chairman, ADP, also a former presidential candidate. He'll be joining us very shortly. He's Yagabi Yusuf Sani. All right, Kingsley.
Okay, gentlemen, once again, our delight to have you. As I said, we are all regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. We, of course, are focusing on the issues ahead of the 2023 general election. And before then, we're going to have the party primaries. And before the party primaries, we have seen a stampede by an unusual number of persons who are aspiring to be the standard bearers of their respective political party. I've been scratching my head to find out whether there had ever been a time in the history of election cycles in Nigeria where as many persons have indicated their intention or groups have been pressuring them to become aspirants and then to contest the primaries. Everybody wants to be the president of Nigeria from May 29, 2023. Yunus Ustaz, you've handled a number of election cases. What do you think is happening?
I think the problem is simply this. It's either we are never a serious people or we're never a serious people, or everybody thinks that Nigeria is now like Animal Farm. And that's most unfortunate. In fact, you see, it's a serious issue. It pains me. If everybody wants to be president, how many of us will be the led? But no, on a serious note, that is what is happening today. And it shows that we are not serious people. And quote me anywhere. Most of those who are trying to contest, tell me in your heart of hearts, who is really credible? Tell me. Let us not deceive. You people are young. I pity you people because by the time we might have gone, you people will be reaping the bad aspect of all these things. I mean, it's unfortunate. And even if you look at it, do you know in this country, anybody who has that capable mental barometer will never be given the chance to rule? No. The first disqualification is that, of course, none of the major political parties will take him. He may go to the small ones that will never see the light of the day. He will not have money to bribe. We'll come to that later. How a public servant will buy a form for 100 million? Don't tell me it is his brother or sister. It's a lie. Let us be serious with ourselves. I think we need reorientation in this country. And I don't think we are close to that reorientation yet. I pity this country. Fortunately, some of us are almost gone, so no problem.
All right. Thank you, Dide Ustaz Usman. Let's bring in Sheriff Gali Ibrahim, a political scientist. What do you make of this litany of persons, who are vying to become the standard bearer of their various political parties, especially the ruling party, the APC? What, in your opinion, formed the idea of everybody wanting to buy forms, even when the amount attached to it is so humongous?
An average politician is like a lion in the jungle. A lion in the jungle in the sense that he observes very carefully and cautiously to see when is he ready to attack. So they have made Nigeria to be like an animal kingdom and Nigeria like a prey. Why is it so? This particular coming out of presidential aspirants in Nigeria is rather circumstantial, determined by so many circumstances. For example, if you go back to 2003, you discovered that there were about 20 presidential aspirants. Then it was rather incremental because in 2007, it increased to 25. Then in 2011, it decreased to about 19. Then in 2015, it also decreased to 14. Then in 2019, the number skyrocketed to about 59 presidential aspirants in Nigeria. And this is 2023. The number is still counting. Now we are getting, almost like the same number we had in
2019. So what are some of those variables that actually define this particular emergence, as well as coming out of a great number of political aspirants? Like in 2007, we had about 25 presidential candidates. Then in 2011, presidential aspirants discovered that it was rather definitive, and it was actually established that Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, for sure, he will actually succeed Umaru Yar'Adua as of that particular time. So they decided not to actually compete, to come out en masse to challenge that particular candidature, as well as compete with Jonathan. And that is why the number dropped to about 19. So coming down 2015, the number also dropped. Why did the number of presidential aspirants drop in 2015? Because in that particular year, there was a great, massive, and unprecedented hope, as well as support given to the candidacy or candidature of the current president, President Muhammadu Buhari, because there was a kind of resentment, a kind of political resentment, by Nigerians looking at the nature of the economic position of the state, as well as the insurgency in the northeastern part of the country. So now what Nigerians wanted was the hope. And Muhammad Buhari, when he came in, he gathered that particular support from the masses all over. So that automatically reduced, the number of aspirants, because to compete with him, it was somehow, not possible. Looking at the political clout and support he gathered as of that particular time. Then after 2015, coming to 2019, politicians discovered that there was a great loophole, because there was a failure, in the sight of the government. Things were not actually going well, with the country. So they thought that it was a chance for them to come in and challenge, the government, as well as develop an opportunity for them to actually surface within the political terrain. So that is why in 2019, we had about 59 political aspirants. Even though President Buhari re-emerged in 2019, and in order to finish this particular tenure up to 2023. So the situation in 2015 to 2023 has not virtually changed. And that has given that particular light to politicians and political aspirants to come out in mass. Even the politicians that are in the same political party, in the ruling party with President Buhari, they think that it is a great chance for them to come in order to make a change. But just like what the senior advocate said, are they really qualified? Because they do not have that particular political integrity as what Nigerians saw in Buhari in 2015 to have decided to vote for Buhari as of that particular time. So there are so many factors. And what are those factors, if I may count? There is human nature, because man is naturally selfish, man is naturally greedy, and man is naturally violent. And that is what defines the Nigerian state as we see today. Why? Because the rising nature of poverty, unemployment, educational collapse, and so many other vices. But Nigerians are not after Nigeria, because what they are after is how do we build our political career. And that is why they are coming out, because of that particular greed, because of that particular selfishness as part of human nature. They don't want to give the opportunity to those who can actually do it. They think they can also do it, and they want to compete irrationally with those who can actually do it. And that is why it is still part of human nature. You can see that violence has continued to thrive in our own society. Everywhere, the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, everywhere. It is part of human nature, violence. And it is this particular human instinct that is pushing, people to actually come out. Then apart from this, we have what is called...
Professor Sharif, let's pause you in the meantime and bring in the other guests. We will return to you to further explain the issues that you have raised. I'm sure that there are some viewers out there who will, of course, disagree with the causative factors and the rise in the number of aspirants, where you talked about violence as being an instigation. Some rather substitute violence with ambition. Human beings are naturally ambitious rather than being inherently violent. Professor Sharif, thanks in the meantime. We'll bring you in presently. But let's go back now to our Port Harcourt Network Center, where we are introduced Festus Oguche, regular on Good Morning Nigeria. Mr. Festus Oguche, well, of course, you've been observing the political landscape, a great deal of emphasis on who wants to be president of Nigeria, as though we didn't have other offices in the land. What's your reading of what's playing out ahead of 2023?
Incidentally, the space is quite large to accommodate these aspirants. It also tells me something that our political system is developing, and there's a high level of awareness by people who want to exercise their rights to political participation. The only disturbing factor is the avalanche of persons that are coming out and want to be president, as if, as you rightly stated, it is the only elective position in the land. Another disturbing factor is also the credibility of those who are coming out. And you'll notice one thing, that majority of them are persons who hold one public office or another, elective or appointive. And the third factor, which I think is very, very serious also, is the fact that the core issues of the problems that has beset this country are not being considered at all by them. Apparently, the reason for this large number of aspirants to these political positions is not far-fetched. Our political parties are now rooted in philosophy. There are no actual democratic traditions that you can pin them to the effect that the internal working mechanism of these political parties creates a situation where anybody can come and want to vie for the highest office of the land, even without proper resume and credibility. My take on that matter is very, very simple and straightforward, that the more they say, the merrier. But then we must have a mechanism that can sieve the chaff, or rather the real thing from the chaff. We are yet to have that in political parties. And we are yet to have that very serious internal democratic method or mechanism that can get things working and get serious candidates to emerge or come out. Now, by the time they begin to roll out their manifestos and, in preparation for the primaries, you begin to discover that a lot of them lack the capacity to even be governors or even be get into appointive positions at the lower levels of governance. A lot of them I know did not perform very well in public office, and they want to come out and become what they perceive is something that belongs to them. The attractions of political office is there, and it's part of the Constitution too. The power that resides in the presidency, the perquisites that go with it, all the powers and all the privileges that come with it, and these are attractions. And I think some of these attractions is one way that can generate this type of movements of persons trying to vie into positions that they know they lack the competence to have. And we have to put all these things into serious consideration to make for a good, veritable political atmosphere and ambience that will allow for the emergence of credible persons. My learned senior there in the studio stated that those persons cannot be allowed to come because the terrain is not their own terrain. Credible persons that will emerge and take this country to the heavens will be very reluctant to come into the fray of what is happening, because it's to me, I think I would like to sound a little much modest here. It looks like madness, and it's a madness that we cannot go on with. It has to be pegged somehow, one way or the other, either by law or by the internal party mechanism, the democratic mechanism within which functions within the internal whim of the political parties, which is very, very important. Kingsley.
Thank you indeed. It's madness that needs to be pegged, and we have to develop a template for that, because as the situation is at the moment, it does appear that it's those who have the wherewithal or the resources are the persons who are showing up. We'll return to some other issues concerning what you've raised, and thank you for your opening remarks. We'll return to the studio here now and bring in Olule Osaze Uzi. A number of persons vying to be nominated by their different parties, especially the ruling party, to become candidates for the presidential election, are public office holders. And of course, we know about the Electoral Act, which stipulates that you must resign before the primaries are conducted. But of course, it's a case that is already in court. But my worry is how would INEC handle the situation as it is at the moment? Because we're still having a number of public office holders who are also buying forms and they're declaring interest to run for presidential seat.
Well, first of all, let me correct something there. The law doesn't prohibit public officers from running for primaries of political parties. It does not.
But they should resign first.
No, that talks about political appointees. That's different from public officers. The Constitution talks about public officers and says if you're holding public office, then you resign from that office 30 days to the election. The election is February and March of next year, 2023. So what the Constitution requires you to do is resign 30 days to the election. So by necessary implication, it permits those people to contest the primaries. The controversy comes from political appointees, who are also public officers, by the way.
Exactly.
But
That's what... No.
It's not all public officers are political appointees.
Is it categorized that there are political appointees and then public officers?
All political appointees are public officers, but not all public officers are political appointees. If you are appointed under a law, for example, and you've gone through the gamut for appointment and you're now appointed, the chairman of INEC is a public officer, but he's not a political appointee. The Chief Justice of Nigeria is a public officer, but he's not a political appointee. He's appointed by the president, but he's appointed under certain laws or constitutions. So the chairman of INEC, the chairman of that's statutory chairman of MD of MPA, for example, is a statutory employee. He's employed by statute. He's not a political appointee. That distinction must be drawn, and that's part of the problem in the public space. People don't seem to draw that distinction between political appointees and public officers. So the Chief Justice is appointed by the President of Nigeria, but he's not a political appointee. The chairman of INEC and national commissioners are appointed by the president following the process, but they're not political appointees. And to remove them, you must go through the laws which guide their appointment, regulate their appointments. Unlike, say, ministers, commissioners, and people like that, who serve at the pleasure of the appointing officer. So a minister is a political appointee in the sense that the president appoints him. It doesn't go through anything apart from confirmation by the Senate. He appoints him or her. And he can wake up tomorrow and say, I don't like your face, and remove you from office. But he cannot do so with, let me use Chief Justice. I don't want to be specific so that I'm not accused of supporting one person. He cannot wake up and say how to remove the chairman of INEC. He must go through a process to do that. So those who serve at the pleasure, at the mercy of the appointing officer, like commissioners, special advisors, special assistants, and ministers, those are political appointees because their tenure is tied to the person that appoints. So tomorrow, if the person making the appointment dies or resigns or leaves office, they also automatically leave unless the successor appoints them. Those are political appointees. So it is the political appointees that Section 84 try to limit for primaries. But as you said, as far as I am concerned, I don't believe whether that subsection is constitutional. Strictly speaking, legally, I'm not so sure it is. Morally, it's a different issue. Well, legally speaking, I'm not so sure. And the courts have so held. It's subject to appeal, so we'll await the decision of a higher court. So that distinction has to be drawn between regular political appointees and public officers. And a lot of people have also come to say that, people like chairman of council, are they appointees? They're not appointees. Elected officials are also exempt from those kind of things. It's only those appointed by the appointments of governor who appoints commissioners and special advisors and such like people, and the ministers who are appointed by the president are affected by that.
Okay, Oluwole, I would like you to state this again for the benefit of our viewers, because it's a matter that we have touched on Good Morning Nigeria, but we are also careful not to get into the nitty-gritty on account of its subjudice nature. Just to clarify it again for the benefit of our viewers, because the issue keeps coming up. The head of the civil service of the Federation had to issue another reminder to federal civil servants, and by implication, I imagine that would also be an advisory to state civil servants. Steer clear of partisan politics. That's the piece of advice. So for public servants who are appointed or who are elected or otherwise, just restate it again for the benefit of our viewers. The categories of public officers who will be affected by Section 84, subsection 12, or who are covered by the constitutional provision.
Okay, thank you. The 8412 deals with political appointees. It states that, before it was struck down by the courts, it states that political appointees are not entitled to be delegates at party primaries. They cannot stand for election they cannot be aspirants, cannot be elected candidates of political parties if you are a political appointee. Now, the Constitution deals with public officers. If you are holding public office, you are required to resign at least not later than 30 days to the election. So by implication, if primaries are held 6 months to the election, public officers, in a sense, are entitled to go into the primaries and contest those primaries. And it's a disqualifying factor. So you are qualified unless and until 30 days to election. If you hold public office and you still insist on holding that public office and you go into the election, then your election can be nullified. But not all political appointees are public officers. All political appointees, as far as I'm aware, are public officers. But not all public officers are political appointees. So staff of the Independent National Commission, staff of NTA are public officers because NTA gets a subvention from government. Once the majority of your income comes from government or government sources, you become a public officer. Whether it's a company owned partly or majorly owned by government, it's a statutory corporation like the NTA, like INEC, and such like bodies. Everybody who works there are public officers, and there are certain provisions of the law that apply to them. So if anybody in NTA wants to go and contest election, or INEC or any of those organizations wants to go and contest election, he resigns 30 days to the election. Technically, they can contest primaries. There's nothing stopping them from contesting primaries because they are not political appointees. They are career officers.
And then the staff of, say, an organization like NTA, using it as an example,
yes,
do not hold their positions, that's to say the members of staff, at the pleasure of the president. No. The same thing with a state broadcasting corporation. Correct. Who would not hold their appointments at the pleasure of the state governor. Okay. If you were to remove such an officer, you have to go through the process.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Now we are in the legal aspect of this conversation, with the pre-election matter. I want you to call me. You are going to call me because I'm coming next to you. You may have to make comments on what he has said. That's number one. But I want to add this to that. The Senate, just passed electoral amendment bill 2022, which seeks to correct the omission of statutory delegates in the section 84 by replacing subsection 8. What is the implication of that?
Before I go into that, in fact, that was done yesterday. Yeah. Before I go into that, you see, initially I thought that this 30 days something is only for the main election. But yesterday, I was reading through the Electoral Act and Section 147 of the Constitution again, and the first schedule to the Electoral Act that says election means any election under this Act. If election means any election under the Electoral Act, it means it includes the primaries. Of course, if it includes the primaries, then all those ministers, CBN, and so on, who now want to contest the primaries must resign 30 days before the date of the primaries. Kingsley has it, but I will leave it for you. It says elections under this act means all the elections, including the primary elections. So election is election. And if you look at the moral aspect of it, why do you want to hold on to the two? You want to be elected for the primary, you want to contest. You are still a governor or deputy governor or anything of a central bank or anywhere. Is it even morally justifiable? If you want, resign now. If you're a minister, you won't resign now. Because the Electoral Act says that election means the elections under this act. That is either primary or secondary selection. Please, let them not throw this country into any problem. You want to contest, leave now and contest. Now, as regards the amendment of yesterday, the issue is simply this. The Senate discovered that some people they called statutory delegates were omitted. That is the president, vice president, governor, deputy governor, and so on. So it was just an addition to that provision. That is, bring in what they had forgotten. I don't think we have any problem with that. But then, well, our hands are tied because of the pendency of this appeal. If not, even that amendment too, if the earlier section were not struck down, it means that amendment yesterday too is a nullity. If the Court of Appeal now says, look, what the Federal High Court Judge Onyadike did is wrong, it means that amendment of yesterday too is wrong, because you say a public officer and so on cannot be delegates. So the whole thing is getting more confused. And we have to tread cautiously. So far we are not, including the Senate.
Well, Veteran Senior Advocate, thank you very much. Professor Sharif, let me pause in the meantime, go over to Festus Oguche, again, because of his background. Oluwole Osaze is also a lawyer. I was just wondering, with regard to the step taken yesterday by the Senate in amending Section 84, subsection 8. This piece of legislation was passed only recently. And all of a sudden now we are having an amendment. Yes, in the rules of lawmaking, there's nothing wrong with that. But the electoral bill was in the crucible, legislative crucible, for such a long time. And then they say, oh, suddenly we woke up and realized that there was an oversight. Some provision ought to have been there. So you'll be scrambling now looking for the amendment, or you handwriting that. What does this tell us about sometimes the quality of our lawmaking? Don't forget that in the past, President Muhammadu Buhari had declined to give his assent to certain bills because of clerical errors in the bills that were sent to him. Typographical errors, cross-referencing errors, and so on and so forth. You pass a bill today, tomorrow you are seeking an amendment. Festus.
Thank you, Kingsley. The thing I'm not comfortable about, really, which I will state straightforwardly, is the rush manner of doing things. Very important things that deserve every bit of circumspection. The distinction is very, very clear under Section 84, subsection 12 of the Constitution. And what the Senate did yesterday was proper and in the right direction. I must commend them in that wise. And they also did a distinction, proved themselves to be well aware of the distinction between political appointees and people in public office. And also those of them who are not political appointees but are officers, party officials who hitherto had been looked at as super delegates as well. I quite like the way they excluded those ones, because the delegate system is becoming very problematic as far as I'm concerned. And I recall that quite some months ago, the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, had warned his party, the PDP, that time that, well, we should have to reduce this load of delegates as much as possible. But to your question, I would say that the lawmaking system, or rather the lawmaking mechanism in this country have not been very impressive as far as I'm concerned, not just on the side of the National Assembly, but also on the side of the presidency. You recall the different dilly-dallings both the presidency and the National Assembly did with electoral amendments right from the towards the build-up of the 1999 elections, and reasons why the president could not assent and how it was brought back, and we are waiting very patiently that there should be a combined sitting of both houses to see if they can override the president's veto. But then it continued on and on until we got to the early part of this year, and these things started to happen. It tells us so many things. It's not just about the conduct of parliamentary business, but it's in terms of the quality of debates, the quality of bills presented to that house. And you see it again from the point of view of the fact that a lot of people who find themselves, they are not actually properly groomed or imbued with the necessary capacity to be there. It's simply the desperation that meets with the attractions of office, the perquisites of office, the high remuneration they earn, and all the privileges attached to those offices. I will say right away also that the business of lawmaking is a very serious one. I believe it is even more serious than public office, because there they hold the wherewithals of democracy. Parliamentary system of government is all about the legislature. Even the executive system the presidential system that we practice currently is much anchored on the legislative business, no matter how emasculated they are within the ambits of our current political experience. But they are very vital. And I think that this action being taken now at this naked time should have been taken care of when the president sounded a note of warning that, look, this section 84 is replete with ambiguity. Please, let's do something about it. And I think what the president ought to have done at that critical moment was to send the bill back to the National Assembly for reconsideration. But then he went ahead to sign the bill, and at the end of the National Assembly that ought to have done the relevant amendments kept waiting. And now we have primaries in a couple of weeks' time, and today they are amending Section 84, subsection 12 of the Constitution. It tells me that we have a legislative system that lacks the capacity to deliver the goals to Nigerians. Pardon my words, but as far as I know, there should be more seriousness in legislative making, across the board, not just in the National Assembly, even in the state houses of assembly, at the lower level of the political ladder, the local governments, than what we have now. Kingsley.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well put, really. I'm happy this comment is being made by a constitutional lawyer, and we are talking about lawmaking in legislative, sector of democracy. Well, let's bring in once again Prof. Sheriff Gali Ibrahim here as a political scientist. I wanted to do an overview of our practice, our democratic practice, the way we practice democracy. We've just heard from Oguche the lack of capacity in terms of lawmaking, the non-thorough approach to issues concerning lawmaking that is precipitating the idea of back and forth, go to the president for assent and return to the National Assembly for reconsideration and what have you. Does it mean that we have not learned enough, after over 20 years of non-stop practice of democratic principles as a nation?
Well, it is holistically based still on our nature, as I earlier made mention, because what he said and made mention of, that some of them are there, but they don't even follow the constitutional provisions to see what is there. Sometimes it is also being driven by the nature of what I made mention of selfishness, because while drafting the Electoral Act, the 8410, for example, the eligibility, i.e. to serve as a delegate or to contest for an election, you don't actually make a draft in this particular area without having a critical consideration over the Constitution. That is the ambiguity he made mention, because the constitutional provision, and that is why Mr. President advised them that that particular section be deleted, because the Constitution has said one thing, and that the Constitution is supreme, supersede whatever that might come outside its own ambit. And that is why it says the resignation, withdrawal, or retirement at least 30 days before election. And here you are holistically disenfranchising that a public office holder here, you don't actually go as delegate to vote, and you are not allowed to contest for an election. And even the Electoral Act goes further in 84:11, saying that any political party that fails to actually comply, it will not have the name of its candidate included, when it is election. Then 84:12, which said that any aspirant who feels that the party guidelines or even the Electoral Act has not been abided by, then he can actually go to a federal high court to seek for redress. So these are some of the ambiguities, but I actually agree with what he said, that look, you need to have that particular veritable constitutional knowledge. You should always be abreast, with the Constitution. You don't become oblivious of the Constitution and you are a lawmaker. But on the contrary, it might have been drafted deliberately to actually disenfranchise a particular class, of the society, because you will not actually forget or jettison the Constitution and come up with this. That is one. Then on the other hand, the statutory delegate, for example, in Nigeria, the nature, the ambience of democracy in Nigeria is that once you allow for consensus or even a kind of indirect election which mandates the primaries to actually hold, what are we talking? You are allowing councillors, chairmen of local government, even vice chairman, governors, deputy governors, local chairman of political parties. What are you saying? Now, if you are able, because there is a duality of the whole process, consensus and what? An indirect election. Now the two will be mashed together, because there will be a kind of monetary consensus. Monetary consensus in the sense that if you have a governor, tell me, why don't you have the entire chairman, local government chairman of that particular state? Why can't you have the entire councillors of that particular state? So consensus is actually coming back, to this particular level. But in a normal circumstance, those who should be delegate should be the statutory delegate, because they are true representatives of the people and Nigerians, right from the grassroots, the councillors, the chairmen, the governors. But reverse is the case in our own country. And that is why there is no political utility. And that is why there is no democratic, development. Why? Because the issue of our self-serving interest, that is what we follow, not the nation and not the development of the entity. I now come back to what I was actually saying earlier of why this particular massive movement of political aspirants, in terms of emergence. I made mention of history. These people want to be in the pages of history. I'm the 25th, I'm the 15th of the president of Nigeria. Why? Because I have the money, I have the influence, but then I want to be part of history. Let me be remembered that I was once the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Then apart from this, there is also self-actualization, because you have got everything, but the family is there, the work is there, whatever you want in your life, you have it. If you critically look at many of these particular candidates, you discover that they have achieved. But that particular spirit of self-actualization is lacking until they become president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is another driving force that is actually gravitating the politicians, seeking for nomination forms, expression of interest forms, in order for them to self-actualize, their own interests as well as their own historiography. Then apart from this, we also have an issue of cronyism. Why? Because some of these particular aspirants are still public office holders, and they award contract to so many people. So if you award contract to me, why shouldn't I actually buy a form for you and promoting you for you to emerge as Mr. President? Because if you are a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I know I'm going to have contract from NNPC, from the Port Authority, all the strategic institutions of Nigeria, you give me contract. So why don't people buy forms, purchase forms for this particular public office holders? That is cronyism, which in itself is corruption. Then another issue is what I call fear and conspiracy. Fear and conspiracy is that these people are afraid for Nigerians and other relevant institutions to say that, look, where did you get the money? We are afraid of this particular thing to happen. The FCC is there watching, so that we are afraid this particular watchdogs shouldn't be actually sent to us in the nearest future or even now. So the conspiracy is that we even give you the money. So but tell the public that you are financing me, you are purchasing the form for me. So these are the kind of things, you know, that are actually constituted in all these particular democratic journeys in Nigeria. And I fear for my country. Why? Because if these things are not actually changed, we are not going to have democratic change. We are not going to have a political change, you know, even to the farthest future, which we actually prospect and expect. But except all these particular things need actually change, we open up our eyes, we introduce direct elections, no matter how expensive it is. It is true democratic, even though it is not going to be devoid of rigging and whatever, but that will actually satisfy the electorate and think that the leaders are true representatives of themselves.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sharif Gari Ibrahim, for the comments that you have made. We're going to take a short break, Kirian. Just before we go on that short break, on the issue of the quality of lawmaking that we have encountered in recent times and the ready recourse to amendments just so soon after a bill is signed into law. We hear from time to time that even legislative aides don't get paid. They have staged protests and demonstrations over the arrears of their payments. So if you don't pay your legislative aides, who are those then that will do the research work for you? Who are those then that will consult for you? Who are those then that will advise you?
And they have told us that part of the monies being paid to them are meant for these aids, you know, and that when people argue that they're taking home a huge sum of money on a monthly basis, they say they're factored in those aids, you know, in whatever they are paid on a monthly basis. So when someone says a legislator is paid up to 10 or 12 million naira a month, one wonders why the aids should be old.
Well, that's right. Some of them refer to the Assembly Commission and say that that's where the issue is. But the fact is there appears to be a challenge with the capacity of the aides or even of the lawmaking process. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
157.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. At the beginning of the conversation segment, Kirian did say that we will be joined by a fifth guest, and he's just with us now. Engineer Yabagi Yusuf Sani, YY Sani as he's called, is the National Chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, and also National Chairman of African Democratic Party. Engineer Sani, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, Kingsley. My party is Action Democratic Party, not African Democratic Party.
Action. Sorry, I apologize. I apologize. Action. That's Action Democratic Party. Very quickly, so that we can maximize the remainder of the time we have for the conversation segment. Political parties are said to be requesting for an extension of time for the conduct of their primaries. And we had in the news bulletin that INEC says there will be no extension, and that any extension will have a knock-on effect on the range of activities leading up to next year's elections. Are the parties in disarray that they are now asking for time to put their house in order? Disarray that they are now asking for time to put their house in order?
No, the parties are very, very resilient. Like you know, Nigeria is a very strong country when it comes to democratic institutions, in terms of growing those institutions. And the political parties are one of the institutions, very critical one in the scheme of things as far as democracy is concerned. And the issue that led to us asking for an extension of time, adjustment, very little adjustment in the time frame that I was given between April 4 to June 3rd for parties to get all their acts together in terms of submission of names of candidates that will stand the elections, is because of other things that came into the reality after this time frame has been given. There's no way a national holiday will not affect, a national program like this. And we had 2 holidays, back to back. We had the Lenten period, the Easter celebration, and then just after that we had also the Salah period, that is after the Ramadan fasting. And here again we are battling with the issue of shortage of petroleum products in this country, which definitely will hamper movement of the people, our people. So these factors plus others, made it necessary for us to ask for this extension of time. And plus, like I think all of us know now, that this law is the first outing that we're putting this law to test as far as the amendments that were introduced in the electoral law is concerned. And to bootstrap why it is not out of place, when you are doing something for the first time, to say, okay, please look at how you can give us time so that we can get it right, is what happened yesterday. I heard that National Assembly, just after passing the law, is again revisiting the same law to take a second look at some of the clauses that they believe were not all embracing in terms of accommodating the democratic demands, giving people rights to exercise their freedom of franchise and things like that. So we political parties come in to ask INEC during the consultative forum that we normally have every 3 months. The forum was an opportunity for us to take a look at what we have done, from the last, engagement with INEC until now, and also look at what we plan to do, what INEC plans to do, because we are on the same page. We are one in the same way it comes to getting it right. The democratic processes. INEC believes, I'm sure, and we believe too, that we are as passionate and committed to this project of democracy entrenchment on the continent of Africa. I mean, in Nigeria, which is the biggest, largest economy, largest democracy on the continent of Africa. So we must get it right, because we are looked up as leaders, in this climb, and we believe that anything that was doing at all, was doing well. So that's why we have discovered that the time given to us is too short, and we have discovered that we can make haste slowly. We know that time is of essence, but we're not competing. Nigeria is not competing with anybody as far as getting it right is concerned. And we believe that primaries, as we have witnessed, as we have observed, is the most crucial, node in the election chains, the value chain that you have in the election processes. Primaries, because if you don't get it right from the primaries, believe you me, any other thing you try to do until the end of the process is always not in a manner that you'll be proud of what you have at the end of the day. So this is why we're asking for this time to ensure that leadership recruitment selection in this country, as provided for by the primaries, is done in a way that Nigerians will be happy with what will emerge as people that will pretend over their affairs as either governors, senators, or president for that matter. So this is why we're asking for this time. And this time we're asking for does not in any way affect the constitutional provision of 6 months before the elections, which is the requirement, by law. So the time we're asking for, we believe, yes, it may introduce more activities, shifting of certain things, other activities that INEC may have to carry out, maybe putting more resources or more time than what they had planned before. But like I said, whatever is worth doing at all is worth doing well. And this exercise is very, very important, because this is at the button of the beginning of the process of 2023 elections and installing governments at the various tiers of government that will respond to the demands of the people of this country. And if you don't take time to recruit your leadership, give ticket to those that will meet your aspirations of giving this country a government that we'll be proud of, it will not be worth our while. So this is why the parties came together and ask, I appeal to INEC to take a second look because of, like I said, factors came in that were not factored into the program, such as, like I said, this disruptive, environment we have as a result of the fuel shortages that you have today. Nobody knows when it will disappear, and it will affect our movement, definitely. Logistics is part of it. These holidays we had is also one thing. And the fact the matter is that even the National Assembly that gave us the law, they're again going back to
I think your points are noted. Your points are noted. And when it comes to the issue of scheduling for elections and the preparations, towards that, the INEC also factored in those holidays, because the holidays are well known, they are going to come. The issue of fuel scarcity, that can come at any time. And if we keep shifting at any point in time, the nation experience difficulty, then we may have a clash. And that is why INEC is saying, look, political parties should put their acts together. And we've also had issues where political parties keep having internal problems, internal difficulties, and all of that. Even to conduct conventions are becoming difficult for political parties. These are persons who have been in association for a very long time. You know each other, you know your capacities and what have you. But let me leave it at that. We may return to that if we have time. But I want to bring in Oluwole Osaze Uzi on this matter. He is no longer with INEC, but he understands the terrain. He understands how this works. So what's your position on this matter? And again, talk also about the legality of the amount of money or fees being charged by political parties for one to be eligible to contest for the primaries.
Thank you very much. You actually adequately addressed what I would have said. It's INEC actually factored these things in. There are holidays that we know well ahead of time. Before INEC released the timetable, we knew when Easter will be. We knew when the Muslim holiday Salah will be. So that's not an issue. We also know that if we shift, then June 12th, there's a holiday on June 12th. We know that. So would you say it should be shifted again because of June 12th? There's a Muslim holiday, 30-something days time. That's it. Do you say you will shift it because those two holidays now are in between? First, we've conducted elections even in times of logistic challenges, fuel shortages, and things like that. That should not be a yardstick for which if there were reasonable grounds, or a real emergency, probably natural disasters or things that will necessitate a shift, then on the merits you may wish to consider that. But for the reasons given by the political parties that I'm hearing from the IPAC chairman, to me, with all due respect, I'm not so sure how tenable those are. If you shift for those reasons, then you will continue to shift till infinitum. And the next thing everybody's calling, they're calling for interim government, they're calling for things, anti-democratic things. We should not consider
tenure elongation.
Things. That is what it will amount to, and it cause a constitutional crisis. Don't forget, I think 61 days, more than 2 months for them to conduct primaries is more than long enough. It's the same last-minute mentality. If they are started early enough, and all the parties are shifting to the last week of the timetable, but you've had 61 days. I'm not aware that any party has concluded its own process now. Even decided in April, we're already more than halfway. We're going towards the lower end of the timetable, of the schedule given to them. Why must we wait for that time? And don't forget, INEC released this timetable last year, about a year ago, and now had to make an adjustment that was necessitated by the amendment to the Electoral Act, which says you must give notice of elections 365 days, 360 days before the election, 1 year before the election. So because the bill was passed into an act in March, and it was now less than 365 days, INEC now had to shift the elections dates by a week. So for reasons of legality, you may talk about a shift, but not for logistic challenges or we didn't know the public holiday will be disruptive. There are still some more public holidays to come in between.
Exactly.
October 1st is coming. So you say because of the October 1st holiday, you will now shift again, and it has implications for all. It's a domino. Once one falls, so many other things have to fall. So what you take on the left affects that. All right. As to the legality of nomination fees, now that's a big question. It's being called to question. I'm happy the Leonard Slook is here too. The Electoral Act, one of the innovations of the Electoral Act is that parties cannot impose conditions outside of the Constitution. So it is the constitutional guidance for presidency, for National Assembly, section 66, 67, 131, and those sections of the Constitution. Payment of fees is not one of the conditions for eligibility in the Constitution. The payment of fees. So it calls to question whether the requirement that they must pay fees. The argument is that, well, parties need these monies to run the administration. But that is not contemplated in the Constitution, and it's not something that the legislators thought about. And maybe they think about it, they now want to go and amend the act. I don't know. But payment of fees, not to talk of the quantum of fees to be paid, the payment of fees is not something that's envisaged in the Constitution. Secondly, the issue of people donating and going to pick funds for people, that is not contemplated in the Constitution. The section 221 of the Constitution prohibits any other person apart from individuals and political parties from donating to for any candidate or for any aspirant or for any political cause. The Companies and Allied Matters Act prohibits companies from so donating. So associations cannot donate. So you cannot even have an association of farmers, association of politicians, association of soldiers, or anything. No association can donate to a political cause. It's prohibited by the Constitution.
Registered association.
No association. The Constitution doesn't use the word registered. Whether you're registered or you're not registered. So we come and
because we talked about Almajiri, Association of Almajiri a while ago.
You cannot contribute. You cannot contribute to any funds. 3, 4 of us here and looking at the theme of Good Morning Nigerians cannot form an association, whether it's registered or not, and say we think a Prof is a good candidate and we put Prof. We cannot do that. It's prohibited by the Constitution.
Okay.
It's prohibited. Companies cannot donate. Only political parties and individuals. And then individuals, there's a limit to how much individuals can donate to any political association. There's a limit. And I think the Electoral Act says inexorable place limit. And the extant limit I'm aware of is 1 million naira. So no individual can donate more than 1 million naira. Anybody doing that it's illegal and can be punished, can go to jail for that in addition to being fined. Some of these issues are the issues we should be debating and should really look at.
Okay. We will drill into this issue further. Back to the joke that Kira and I have been cracking since yesterday. There are groups outside the gate of NTA waiting to give me my nomination forms. They have about three nomination forms. So we're going to instruct our director. Director, please get them to disperse. In the meantime, we'll find out an alternative arrangement
because it's now unconstitutional. It has been deemed to be unconstitutional.
to procure the forms, but. Leonard Senior Advocate, there are a number of issues that are embedded in what we have seen with regard to the expression of interest on nomination forms. Some persons have done the arithmetic and circulated on social media that at the end of the day, the parties would have raked in tens of billions of naira from the nomination forms, right from the top office to the membership of the state houses of assembly. And questions are being asked whether this is the right thing to do, on the one hand. There are also issues around the gifts that Oluwole Osaze-Ozie talked about. What kind of gifts can you accept under the Code of Conduct, which is also a schedule to the Constitution? Are we modeling up the political space, or is this an attempt at even bypassing the campaign finance regulations so that at the end of the day you have money in your kitty and then you can face the elections going forward?
You see, I totally agree with my boss here. Forget about law first. Legally, he has defined it. It's unlawful. It's illegal. And please, 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 Nigeria belongs to all of us. These people buying form for people, apart from being illegal, it's a lie. No, we have to be frank. It's a lie. What happens really is that these people will say, okay, take this money, say you are the one buying for me. I'm sorry, I may be pessimistic, but we have to do something about this country. That's why we are degenerating. It's unfortunate. Apart from being illegal, it is morally wrong. Take the central bank governor, for instance. It's not shameful. Even Section 10 of the CBN Act prohibits him from doing any of those things he's doing now without resigning. And the level playing ground, apart from people saying their uncles, everybody, nobody donated, but then are we even having a level playing ground? If we see the vice president using the presidential plane to go to Bauchi and campaign, please let us be. Some of you may be afraid, but I'm an old man. I have to say something before I die. Is it good? Somebody is using the government vehicles to go and campaign. I mean, and that is why we can never get a totally good person to run this country again. Those who are good will not have the level playing ground to campaign on. In fact, they will not even be nominated at all. Sue me, I'll defend it. Among the people campaigning now, saying they want to be president and so on, God forbid. But I hope Nigeria, one day, I hope these people will realize that Nigeria does not belong to them alone. It belongs to all of us. But the way we are going, apart from being unlawful, is morally wrong.
All right, Yunus Usman, thank you. While I said, you didn't have enough time with us, but we're going to allow you 1 minute to also make comment on the issue of the political parties' preparedness for their primaries, and again, the morality or legal justification for the amount of fee being charged by political parties for one to be able to contest for the primaries.
Karen, but politics itself is management of crisis. So we are masters when it comes to management of crisis. We don't have any issues with what is happening in terms of the preparedness, and then how prepared are we? We are always prepared as politicians, because we know the game, we know what to do. But when we see a problem, it is also our duty to point it out. And then the old saying is that anything done in a haste, believe you me, cannot give you the desired results. And that's what we are trying to run away from. And this country, like the earlier speakers have said, deserve better, and to give it better, we have to do it properly. We have to take time to ensure that those that we are recruiting to pretend over the tiers of governance in this country should be those that are properly screened, and they are those that will deliver, the dividends of democracy that the democracy is all about. So that's what we are saying when we ask for time, extension. When you take 2 weeks out of 60 days, how much time remains? When you have disruptive situation in the economy, and you are saying, no, it doesn't affect anything, we should go ahead. I mean, we know all these things because we are wearing the shoes. We know where it pinches. So that's why we are telling you that we are responsible people. We know we love this country like any other person, any other profession that you can talk about. And you know that the most important profession in the world, really, if truth must be told, is political management of the nation. And that's why you don't treat this with kid gloves. No, you treat it properly. And that's what we are saying. Let's make haste, slowly. That's all we are saying. Nobody is asking to violate any provision of the Constitution. And so people asking for more time is a signal that politicians are not ready. We are more than ready, believe you me. And what you see people doing, going around, talking to people, assuaging fears, so that when we now emerge with candidates, we do not end up, with crisis that we cannot manage. That is the situation. That's why all these consultations going on, people moving from one place to another, and they're talking about whether it's from the south or from the north, or is it Muslim or Christian. There are realities in politics, and you must talk to the issues. You must resolve those issues, amicably. So that's what we're doing. And then you talk about fees being charged. We have to be sincere. Believe you me. This is a very.
I thought we could take that comment by the national chairman of IPAC with regard to the fees being charged by the political parties. But unfortunately, we're out of time. But this is a matter that we will return to in due time, on account of the fact that there are many issues that are popping up ahead of the 2023 election. We'd like to thank all our guests who've been with us this morning. Engineer Yabagi Yusuf Sani, National Chairman of IPAC, delight having you, even though your comments were brief. From our Port Harcourt Network Center, we're joined by constitutional lawyer Festus Oguche, a regular on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you very much for being our guest. Here in the Abuja studios, Associate Professor Sharif Gali Ibrahim of the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja. Thank you for being here. Oluwole Osazeuzi, former Director, Voter Education and Publicity of INEC, and also a lawyer. Thank you for being our guests. And last but not the least, Learned Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Yunus Ustaz Usman. Thank you very much for your perspective. We hope for the very best for our country, and that's why we are discussing.
So we all had the lawyers on this.
Well, three lawyers.
My lecturer, the session of my lecturer, who is a political scientist.
All right. So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadova.
And I'm Kyrian Umayo. Thank you for watching. See you again.